how are you all? Today we're going to do the battle with Grendel, Beowulf, the battle with Grendel. Out from the marsh, from the foot of misty hills and bogs, bearing God's hatred, Grendel came, hoping to kill anyone he could trap on this trip to High Herod. He moved quickly through the cloudy night, up from the swampland, sliding silently toward the gold shining hole. The gold shining hole is a kenning. These they are two words. A hyphenated word is one word. Two hyphenated words, form one word. Gold shining hole, this is kenning. This means Herod. Herod is the hole in which Hrothgar and his men used to celebrate their victories. He had visited Hrothgar's home again. Hrothgar's home is another kenning for Denmark before, or for Herod itself. Knew the way, but never, before nor after that night, found Herod defended so firmly. Don't forget that Beowulf and his men were sleeping in Herod that night, waiting for the coming of Grendel. His reception so hard. He was received so harshly by Beowulf and his men. He traveled, forever joyless, straight to the door, opened the door, then snapped it open, tore its iron fasteners with a touch, and rushed angrily over the threshold. He strode quickly across the inlaid floor, snarling and fierce. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, burned with a gruesome light. Then he stopped, seeing the hall crowded with sleeping warriors. To his surprise, the hall was crowded with sleeping warriors. It had been empty for 12 years, stuffed with rows of young soldiers resting together. And his heart laughed. He felt very happy. His heart laughed is a personification, as you know, because hearts don't laugh. He likens the heart to a human being who is laughing. His heart laughed. He relished the sight. He enjoyed the sight, intended to tear the life from those bodies. By morning, he wanted to kill them. By morning, the monster's mind was hot with the thought of food and feasting. His belly, filling his belly, abdomen, would soon know. But fate that night intended Grendel to know the broken bones of his last human supper. It was his last human supper because he would die shortly after it. Human eyes were watching his evil steps. Beowulf and his men were watching him in the darkness, waiting to see his swift, hard claws. Grendel snatched at the first gate he came to, ripped him apart. He snatched at the first soldier he came to and ripped him apart, cut his body to bits with powerful jaws, drank the blood from his veins and bolted him down. Hands and feet, death and Grendel's great teeth came together, snapping life shut. Then he stepped to another still body, another sleeping body, clutched at Beowulf with his claws. This time it was Beowulf. He killed the first person, drank his blood, and threw him through the body on the floor, and then came to the second victim, but it wasn't a victim. It was Beowulf. He grasped at a strong-hearted, wakeful sleeper. He was a wakeful sleeper. He pretended to be sleeping, but he was wakeful, and was instantly seized himself. Here Grendel tried to seize or catch Beowulf, but he found that Beowulf caught his claws, bent back and bent them back as Beowulf leaned up on one arm when he was sleeping. That shepherd of evil is a third or a fourth kenning in these lines. Guardian of crime, another kenning, referring to Grendel. Knew at once that nowhere on earth had he met a man whose hands were harder. This is the strongest man he met on earth. His mind was flooded with fear, but nothing could take his talons, his claws, and himself from the tight, hard grip. So Beowulf caught his claws, or Grendel's claws, tightly. Grendel's one thought was to run from Beowulf. He wanted to escape, flee back to his marsh, and hide there. This was a different Herod than the hall he had emptied. It was different that night because Beowulf was there. But Hygelac's follower, Hygelac is the Swedish king or the Geatland king, the king of Beowulf back in Sweden. Hygelac's follower is a cunning. It means Beowulf remembered his final boast and standing erect, he decided to fight Beowulf, to fight Grendel barehanded. Remember, stop the monster's fight or flight. He stopped his escape, fastened those claws in his fists till they cracked, clutched Grendel closer. The infamous killer, Grendel, fought for his freedom. So it's Beowulf now who is catching Grendel's arm tightly, wanting no flesh but retreat. Grendel doesn't want any flesh now, he just wants to escape to his safety, desiring nothing but escape. His claws had been caught, he was trapped. That trip to Herod was a miserable journey for the writhing monster. The high hall rang, its roof boards swayed. There was a fight between the two buddies, and Danes shook with terror. Down the aisles, the battle swept. Again, the fight between the two strong buddies. Angry and wild, Herod trembled, wonderfully built to withstand the blows. It was a strong building. The struggling great bodies beating at its beautiful walls, shaped and fastened with iron. This is the whole again, inside and out. It was shaped and fastened with iron. It was strong building, artfully worked. It was decorated, embellished. The building stood firm. Its benches rattled, fell to the floor. Gold-covered boards grating as Grendel and Beowulf battled across them. Hrothgar's wise men had fashioned Herod to stand forever. They built it to stand forever. Only fire they had planned could shatter what such skill had put together. Fire only would destroy such a strong building, swallow in hot flames and such a splendor of ivory and iron and wood. Suddenly, the sounds changed. The Danes started in new terror, cowering in their beds at the terrible screams of the Almighty's enemy. The Almighty's enemy is Grendel. Sang in the darkness. The horrible shrieks of pain and defeat, the tears torn out of Grendel's taut throat. Hell's captive, again Grendel, Hell's captive, caught in the arms of him who of all the men on earth was the strongest. He was held in the arms of Beowulf, that mighty protector of men. Beowulf meant to hold the monster till its life, until it is killed. Leaped out, knowing the fiend was no use to anyone in Denmark. All of Beowulf's band had jumped from their beds, ancestor swords raised and ready, determined to protect their prince if they could. So Beowulf's followers stood up with their swords to protect him, because he was, as we said, fighting barehanded, or he decided in his boast to fight barehanded. Their courage was great, but all wasted. They could hack at Grendel from every side, trying to open a path for his evil soul, but their points could not hurt him. They tried to hit the monster with their swords, but in vain. The sharpest and hardest iron could not scratch at his skin. Why? For that skin-stained or that sin-stained demon, cunning, another cunning, sin-stained demon, Grendel, had bewitched all men's weapons. He had bewitched all men's weapons, laid spells that blunted every mortal man's blade. But any sword wouldn't affect or wouldn't cut into his body. And yet his time had come, his days were over, his death near, down to hell he would go, swept groaning and helpless, to the waiting hands of still worse fiends. Now he discovered, once the afflicter of men, tormentor of their days, what it meant to feud with Almighty God. Grendel saw that his strength was deserting him, was leaving him. This is personification. His claws bound fast. Eglac's brave follower, Beowulf, tearing at his hands, cutting off his hand. The monster's hatred rose higher, but his power had gone. He was weak now in the hands of Beowulf. He twisted in pain, and the bleeding sinews deep in his shoulder snapped. Muscle and bone split. His arm was ripped off and broke. Okay, the battle was over. Beowulf had been granted new glory. Grendel escaped without his arm, but wounded as he was, could flee to his den, to his home, his miserable hole at the bottom of the marsh, only to die, to wait for the end of all his days. And after that bloody combat, the Danes laughed and with delight. They were happy. They thought that they got rid of the monster. He who had come to them from across the sea, Beowulf, bold and strong-minded, had driven affliction off. He had helped them, purged Herod clean. He cleansed it. He was happy now with that night's fierce work. The Danes had been served as he'd posted. He'd served them. Beowulf, a prince of the Geats, had killed Grendel, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering forced on Hrothgar's helpless people by a bloodthirsty fiend. Fiend is like a devil or a demon. Okay? No Dane doubted the victory. All of them were sure that Beowulf was the victor. For the proof, they were all sure that Grendel died, hanging high from the rafters where Beowulf had hung it. Beowulf cut off or ripped off Grendel's arm and put it up on the walls of Herod, with the monster's arm, claw and shoulder and all. Here we have the Danes celebrate Beowulf's victory. That night, though, Grendel's mother kills Hrothgar's closest friend and carries off her child's claw. The next day, knowing that her son was killed, Grendel's mother came out of her cave underwater and went to Herod and killed Hrothgar's, the Danish king's closest friend, and carries off her child's claw. She carries off her child's claw from the wall of Herod. The next day, the horrified king tells Beowulf about the two monsters and their underwater lair. Let's stop here, dear friends. Thank you.